Kevin Welsh, I want to talk about this business that you've built up over the years, offering a glove fitting custom software system where shrink wrap just failed to work together.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Martin.
Explain who are the right businesses for you.
Sure. So I usually tell people anyone where their business process is a differentiator. So if something about the way that they do business makes them different from their competitors, then probably custom software is a fit.
And talk about the process. How do you work with somebody in developing a custom system?
Sure. So usually it kicks off with a 30-minute conversation, on the phone, or we meet up for lunch or something like that. I sort of conduct an interview, ask a bunch of questions about how data flows through the business, what tools they're using today, what their goals are, and then usually the project kicks off with a deep dive discovery phase, and that's typically half a day or a day where I interview anyone in the company who touches or creates data, and we start to create a map of the workflow within that company.
There's another thing I think you do unique that interests me is understanding the culture, the nouns, and the verbs of the company. I'd like you
Yeah.
to talk about that because
Sure, sure. So years ago, I made a mistake that I learned from. We were working on a project where we needed to create email templates. And what I realized after the fact was everyone had a slightly different idea about what template meant in that use. So, it was a bit of a painful lesson at that time, but something that I learned from, right? And so what I've done since then is early on in the process, we have a conversation around surfacing those nouns, right? And so I just keep asking the question, is there any other thing? Is there any other object? Is there any other piece of information? And so the first thing is to get them all out. And then the next thing is to agree on what we're going to call them. So what we don't want to do is have someone call it a job, someone else call it a project, someone else call it a scope of work. It makes the conversations more complicated. It makes it more error prone. And from a developer perspective, we always make sure, and most companies probably do make sure, that the user interface has the word that people are used to using.
I don't think so.
Well,
Sorry, I've seen a lot of, especially the shrink wrap stuff.
Sure, right.
You got to learn their
well, that's
language
right,
every time, and they don't all talk to each other.
and that is a good point, right? I mean, because they're going for what's the most common rather than your specific. So that part is relatively easy, right? We can make it say on screen job if you want to call it job, but if it was built with everything from the code and the database calling it project, then when we have meetings with shareholders and developers, there's this disconnect in language. Someone says project, someone says job, someone says scope, and it just it's hard enough to take a very logical business process and reduce it down to code. It's even harder when people aren't on the same page about what we're calling things. So it's just a good practice to make sure everyone agrees on terminology as a starting point.
Can you give an example of working with a client where you've done this?
Sure. So recently, I guess it was maybe 2016 when we actually kicked all this off. Larry's Coffee, they're a coffee roaster in town. They were using QuickBooks Desktop to track their inventory, their accounting. They were basically running the business with QuickBooks. What they wanted to do was take the lot number from green coffee and trace that lot number through their roasting, through their blending, into their packaging, and create products that had new lot numbers, and then be able to trace that lot number all the way back to the green lots that were in that bag, and then to be able to trace those green lot numbers all the way back to the field and the farmer that grew those coffee beans, right? And so QuickBooks obviously doesn't do that. We did some research in the coffee space. There wasn't a company out there that had that type of tool. We looked at some add-ons for QuickBooks, and nothing did exactly what they wanted. I certainly don't know every piece of shrink wrap software out there, but we know a few of them and have worked with a few of them. So we were hired. At the very first step was to create that tool. to give them that transparency of their supply chain, and track production. And as time went on, we've added additional features like some FDA validation and certification, a lightweight CRM feature. We redid their front end shopping cart experience, and there's subscription program there, and it ties into marketing and coupons and those kind of things. So over time, we've built their entire data tracking. It's a enterprise resource planning. It's like an ERP system for a coffee roaster that started with the idea of let's just track this data better.
Excellent. And I think this would be more appealing to the customer because more customers care where stuff came from. So if
Yeah.
you've got it, but you can't deliver that data,
That's right.
you can't market that feature.
Right. Yeah. There's some interesting research. I think it's something like 70% of millennials will pay more for a product if they know where it came from. Right. And so we know that, definitely the younger generation, and I think all of us at this point are starting to care about, the impact on the environment, the impact on the workers. And so yes, it's not only a benefit to Larry's, the company, it's a benefit to their customers to have a sense of, where those beans come from. And when they spend $1 with Larry's, they know that they're doing something good.
There's another value that you have I like, and I agree with it, is making sure that your product provides the highest return on investment for them before you start. I want you to talk about that because I don't hear that often. It's kind of like, here it is, here's the price. Now you got to figure out if you'll be profitable with it.
Right, yeah. As an add-on service, one of the things that we do is we map out what does it cost to do things the way that you're doing them right now. How many hours, how many employee hours, how does that translate into money? How slower do things get to customers, and how does that translate into lost dollars, right? So we put the effort into making sure that we understand what does it cost to run the business at the starting point, and then what's it going to cost to run the business after we implement this tool, and then compare that with what's it cost to build the tool. And if we can show that building the tool saves you money, typically within a year, most companies, they don't mind spending that money, right? So it's an expense that essentially is going to pay for itself. And from my perspective, what better way to sell what we do than to show that it doesn't cost you any real money to build the tool?
Well, and you're paying your way in a sense.
Right. That's exactly
but also you're very selective in not taking on clients where you don't think it will pay its way. Because I know you've told people that you let me know is you might as well just use these 2 box packages that I know and work with them.
Right.
Because we aren't going to be able to generate enough return on investment with that.
Right.
And I think that's a very important value you have is, am I contributing to the bottom line of the business? And you think we should all do it, but I don't always hear that.
Yeah, and so I guess, as a small business that operates primarily on referrals, right? That's the easiest way for me to get that next referral is if I can show you with math and numbers that what we've done for your company has actually benefited your company financially.
Without a question.
It makes it really easy for you to pass my name.
And refer you to people.
That's right. It makes it easy.
I now want to talk about how did you get into this, because you forged a unique offering in the industry and you're fully self-employed and working and built it up over many years. What got you on this path? What got you here?
Yeah, so I think the tech thing for me started as a little kid. We had a ColecoVision video game system, had a TI, a Texas Instruments 44 computer, and I remember, typing code out in BASIC to create our own video games, and so that whole world has just always been fascinating. As I grew up, I started to study psychology and graduated with a psych degree. And I did some counseling professionally for a few years, and what I found was, counseling to me, that sort of activity, connecting with people, I was doing that in my personal life, and I didn't necessarily want that to be my career. I love to cook, but I don't think I want to be a professional chef, right? That is the same sort of thing for me. So I found that, I didn't have that outlet for creative problem solving and building puzzles and that kind of thing in my personal life. So, it made sense to sort of, look at that as a business. So in early 2000s, I started a cyber cafe in Raleigh on Hillsborough Street with a friend of mine. We did a combination of like a video game center and web development. And I learned sort of early on that that overhead is the enemy. Retail was really an expensive way to set up a web development shop. So from there, we shut that down. I launched Welsh Technologies in 2004. A friend of mine was a creative director at an ad agency, and so he brought me in there, and we did some content management systems before WordPress was a big thing. The ad agency, that whole space, there's a lot of people who move from one company to the next, and they would bring me with them. And I think a lot of people were, I was always really proud to hear that they said, gosh, for a tech person, you're just so easy to talk to. Like you get it, right? And so, I think that's part of having that psychology background. Sets me aside a little bit from other people who are, who don't have that, right? It's a learned skill. And so, yeah, over the years, WordPress came in and ate a bunch of the content management system work. But I always loved business processes. I love being involved with new and different types of businesses and learning how they work, and then coming up with a software model that models that. And so, because I've always been a referral business, and because I have to make decisions in my own company that are based on ROI, right? It just became a core value for me. It's a lot easier to get people's confidence to refer me if I can pay my way through ROI.
Excellent. What a great story. And so what you have is the nerd that understands people and has a passion for understanding how they work, but also the systems. And I can see how the combination together keeps your interest up.
That's right.
Because, above average intelligent people need a lot to keep them entertained,
right.
And that it really makes sense. Well, great. Well, how can people learn more about you?
Sure. So, WelshTechnologies.com. We're on the web. You can find me, Kevin Welsh. I'm on LinkedIn. I imagine we can put up something on the video with my contact information, so feel free to send an email or call. I'm still heavily involved in the business, and so I look forward to people. If you have questions or think we might be able to help, just reach out and contact me directly.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Martin.